All right, what's going on, fellas? Welcome to the Beating the Bookie show. I'm your co-host, Kiefer, joined by my friend Beating the Bookie here. We're going to talk football. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. We had a great week 1 and week 2 of college football. Coming up on week 3, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of storylines developing, and we'll talk a little NFL as well. So obviously, with the Monday Night Football game, a lot of shock and a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen there. So let's jump right into it. Rob, let's head on to NCAA football. We've got Kansas State, number 15, going against Missouri. The total's set at 48, and Kansas State -5. So let's hop in.
Yeah, Kansas State's looked pretty solid to start the year. They just dispatched Troy last week, and Troy State is historically a pretty good program. They're usually in a bowl game every year. They're playing pretty well. Their program's in a good spot. Kansas State, they look pretty good, especially on defense. Kansas State, they're always going to show up on defense. I think they've only given up 10 points this season. And I watched a little bit of the Missouri games, and Missouri to me just hasn't looked really great. First game, I thought Missouri would be improved this year. First game they looked blah, but that's against like an FCS opponent, so it happens. Teams come out flat and stuff like that. But their second game last week against Middle Tennessee State just didn't look very good. They won by like 24-19, I think, to a team that just got destroyed by Bama like 56-7 the week before. And Middle Tennessee State's historically good too, but they're having a down year this year. I expected more from Missouri. And if this game was at Kansas State, I would for sure say, blowout Kansas State. But since it's at Missouri, the line is, -5 for Kansas State. I'd probably still lean towards Kansas State just because it's on the road, and they're a much different road team historically than at home because it's tough to play in Manhattan, Kansas. But on the road,
and they have some pretty big, SEC road upsets. I mean, a couple years ago, Kansas State came in and beat Mississippi State at home. So, I mean, Missouri, watch out.
They did. So yeah, I would lean to Kansas State right here. But Missouri, they haven't really shown me what I'm looking for, what I'm looking forward to seeing this season, because I took like the Florida wins under, for example, and I thought Missouri was one of those toss-up games that Florida could win, maybe, would lose. But, right now I'm still a toss-up on that game. So I expect more from Missouri. So maybe we'll see it this week. But if I had to pick a side right now on Wednesday, I would definitely go with Kansas State.
I'm going to have to agree with you, man. Drinkwitz, the Missouri head coach, he was last season getting a little involved in Twitter and getting all the kinds of trying to build the hype around the program. And they played Georgia close in that one game, but I don't see them really building off any kind of hype they made up last year. And yeah, they're in trouble this weekend against Kansas State. I like that -5. Good parlay piece for the money line. I like it. Kansas State. Moving on, number 14, LSU. They're -9.5 versus Mississippi State. The total set at 54.5. LSU, obviously, they had a beat down last week, but they just I don't know if they've got it, man. I don't know if Brian Kelly's got it. Everybody's been asking that question for years now. Can he win the big game? Blah, blah, blah. Is Mississippi State the big game? No, but they could pose a pretty good threat to him, but we'll see.
Yeah, LSU, as we all know, they got destroyed in the second half by Florida State to start the year. Last week they played McNeese State, and they kind of struggled to start the game off, but they rolled offensively. They did whatever they want, so I think they've got some confidence there. Whereas, Mississippi State, BTB Jesse had the Mississippi State team total last week over 34.5. They didn't really impress. They went for it a lot on 4th and goal situations. They got stuffed every time by a weak Arizona defensive line. I mean, Arizona is not supposed to be very good this year at all, and their D-line just manhandled them on 4th and goal when it counted. So I was not very impressed with Mississippi State. I mean, they really could have lost. I mean, the game went to overtime.
I mean, it's overtime, yeah.
And they got, I thought the Arizona quarterback picked up the first down there at the end. They gave them the first down. They went back to replay and they overturned it, which I thought was the wrong call. So they got some home cooking there from the replay officials. So Mississippi State, they have not impressed me. It's been a few years actually, since they really impressed. I mean, Dan Mullen years are far
2017 probably.
are far
2018.
gone. So, in this spot, I would definitely lean towards LSU, or at least the LSU team total over, or some sorts of something like that, because Mississippi State, their defense did not look too great last week against, like I said, a very poor Arizona team. So I would definitely lean towards like the LSU team total over, or something like that, because Mississippi State defense does not impress me at all.
Right. And it's first year head coach Zach Arnett down there, taking over for Mike Leach. Like you said, not very impressive against Arizona. We'll see how they wind up doing this week. LSU is definitely a much bigger test for them, for that offense and the defense. So we'll see. Moving on, South Carolina, they're plus 27.5 versus Georgia. Total set at 54.5. Georgia hasn't really been too impressive so far this year. I mean, UT Martin covered. I can't remember who they played last week, but I mean, they wound up I think it was Ball State. Ball State wound up just falling over like everybody. I mean, of course they're going to, but Georgia, it's just a slow start. I mean, if you remember last season, they started off super slow as well, but then by the end of the season, they were absolutely beating the brakes off of everybody. So I don't know if you're a Georgia fan. I don't know if you get a little bit concerned or not. Carson Beck, it's his first year. He seems to be doing all right. And in the second half of that last game, he looked phenomenal. So we'll see how he winds up doing. I mean, South Carolina, they've looked incredibly unimpressive. I mean, the UNC game was, I mean, they had so much hype coming into the season this year. After last year, they beat Tennessee. I mean, it was just a hyped up program, and then just fall flat on their face against North Carolina. They're done. They're done. Georgia covers 27.5.
It's such a high line right there. And, the thing that bothers me is, Georgia, if you just look at the box score, they've been steamrolling their first two opponents. But if you actually watch the game, they take about a half to get rolling offensively.
Right.
So a lot of these scores can be a little misleading, but their defense is absolutely dominating. Their defense is better than last year.
Which is crazy.
But they returned more production this year than they brought back last year. So it's not really surprising. And South Carolina, that first game, Spencer Rattler got sacked 9 times, I believe. I did see that they attributed that to, one of the North Carolina coaches. The guy who used to be the Bengals coach. He coached South Carolina last year. So they were saying like North Carolina players said they knew when South Carolina was going to run a pass play, rush play, stuff like that. So that's probably from coaching. But
how do you not change that? How do you not change that if you lose a guy? I mean, it's crazy.
Auburn did it to FSU in the national championship game. So it happens. But South Carolina, they haven't shown me anything remotely positive this season. I thought they were going to have a good season coming in. Like you said, they finished last season pretty much on fire with the upset of Tennessee and stuff. I just don't have much confidence in Spencer Rattler right now. And like I
had
said,
so much in it at the last of the season, man. It sucks.
And it's like I say, it's not, I mean, really, like Spencer Rattler, people can say what they want about him, but if you're getting sacked 8-9 times in a game, I mean, there's nothing you can really do, right? Like that, against UNC, like what could the guy really do? I mean, he's getting sacked every drop back. So it's on his offensive line. It's on the schematics of the offensive play calling and stuff. So yeah, they're heading to, playing, Georgia right now, going to run into the top defense in the country, which Georgia is the best defense in the country.
Yep. And South Carolina really struggled in the first half against Furman, the Paladins, baby. I mean, it was not pretty for them last week.
They did. It wasn't pretty for all the entire state of South Carolina in the first half last week.
Oh my goodness, Clemson, man. Huh.
I know, but South Carolina getting 27.5 points. I mean, you figure if they score 20 points, they'll cover the spread, right? But can they get 20 points against this Georgia defense? I don't really think so, to be honest. So,
no.
I don't think Georgia will score 20 points against this defense, but the 27.5 is just a lot, right?
It is a lot. It's a lot for a conference matchup. I mean, we'll see.
So if I was, I might look at some props this game, like sacks or something like that. I mean, maybe Georgia set it over under 4.5 sacks or something like that.
Oh, that's a hammer.
I might take a look at some props for this game, but I definitely wouldn't back South Carolina after what I've seen offensively for them to start the year, and what I've seen from the Georgia defense. Like I said, this Georgia defense, best defense in the country. It's not even close. So, and Kirby Smart, he just wants to, crush
Hey, he's going to
South
crush him.
Carolina.
Yeah.
So, I would lean to, if I had to play a side, I'd probably lean to Georgia, to be honest. But I'd probably play like the under. If South Carolina team total is like 17.5 or something like that, I'd probably lean towards the under because I don't
It's
see
probably going to
them
be
scoring many points.
right at 17.5. The total's 54.5, 27.5 spread. So, I mean, moving on, Tennessee, number 11. They're getting 6.5 points versus Florida. Over under set at 58.5. Tennessee looked bad last week, man. Austin P did not have a great showing. Florida's looked bad every week. I know they played, I think it was McNeese or somebody, a school like McNeese State last week. And they beat them pretty handily. But they didn't cover. It was 48, and they didn't cover against McNeese. So, Tennessee, is Joe Milton the guy? I think he is. He's got the potential to be. Has he shown that he is the guy yet? No, not really. He's missed throws that last year Hendon Hooker was nailing. And I mean, we're 1 year removed from the entire fan base of Tennessee making memes of Joe Milton and the Taliban, man. I mean, we're a year removed from that. And everybody, before this last game was, hot and heavy on Joe Milton. We're the best team in the country. We're winning the East. The Natty's coming to us, and he hasn't shown me that yet. So I'm curious to see if he shows us this week.
Yeah, both teams I've watched this year. Tennessee looked great in their first game against Virginia, but this is not the same Virginia that we're used to. It's a very down Virginia team who just lost to JMU last week at home. Tennessee, they did look impressive against Virginia, but last week, like you said, 6-6 right before halftime against Austin P. I mean, just not very impressive. And then you look at Florida. Florida against Utah, they looked all right. Not too bad. I mean, they didn't cover, but nobody's won at Utah in 3 years, so it's not really.
That's true.
They were expected to win, but Utah was also starting a third string quarterback, right? So I just look at the coaches for this one, right? The talent on the field is much better for Tennessee, right? Like, I'll take Joe Milton any day over Graham Mertz.
He had one good game in Wisconsin 3 years ago, though, dude.
Yeah, he had a couple good games here and there, but his bad games by far outweighed his good games. I just think Florida. I just think they're lacking a lot of talent, like offensively and stuff. Their defense is always going to be pretty good, but they've lost players to injury this year. They lost players to the transfer portal on offense. So they even had one of their DBs quit after the Utah game. So
after the first game, yeah.
So and also coaching. I mean, Tennessee has a massive advantage right here over Billy Napier. I think Napier is he's more of a Sun Belt coach than an SEC coach, right? And the entire University of Florida, they already want him gone after just a season and a half. So,
they wanted Dan Mullen gone after they made a New Year's Six, and look what they've got.
They did. So if you put a gun to my head right now, I definitely would take Tennessee. I think Tennessee just kind of was stuck in the mud last week. A team like Tennessee at home, they're not going to get up to play Austin P, right? Like they're looking ahead to Florida.
Very hard to get up for that game.
So I think the motivation just wasn't there for Tennessee. I don't think the motivation's really been there this year yet for Tennessee, being a big favorite against Virginia, then Austin P. Whereas the motivation for Florida, it was like they said they were going to go into Utah and beat the Utes, right? And they got crushed, right? So I think this is the first time this year we're going to see Tennessee motivated. And I think Tennessee will cover because I just don't think Florida.
Slow, man.
I don't think Florida's, very talented. Especially, just right now. The program is down. It's not the Florida that we've seen in the past. So, I would lean Tennessee here.
And last year, Florida, they made it a pretty close game against the Vols. And they, there's always the old saying that they haven't won in the swamp in 13 years or since 2003 or something crazy like that. But like those guys don't care about that. Like these guys probably weren't even, they're at the school, but they're not homers. You know what I mean? They're there to play, get to the next level. they don't care about this. You haven't won in the swamp in 20 years deal. So, I mean, people ranting about that, the Gator fans, Gator faithful. I'm sorry, but that just doesn't matter.
Has it been 20 years? Has it been 20 years? Because
I think it's since 2003 or something since they've won in the swamp.
Yeah, I went to a game. It was 2001. Travis Henry just ran crazy. All Florida needed to do was win the game to make the BCS, and Travis Henry ran for like 200 plus yards on them, and Tennessee just destroyed them. But I was at that game, but I don't know when the last time they lost was. But those streaks, I mean, that's when people say that, talk about streaks in Florida as they've won this many straight games. I mean, it's totally meaningless because last year's team, 2 years ago, those teams have nothing to do with this year's.
And team 2 years ago, I mean, it's probably 15 people that were on that team. It's such a high turnover nowadays. Anyways, college game day this week is going out to Boulder, Colorado. I mean, this matchup is ridiculous for game day. Colorado versus Colorado State. You get a 23.5-point favorite, and you get game day for there. So, I mean, they were itching to go out there. I don't know why they couldn't wait till next week and go to Oregon, Colorado. I mean, that's going to be the place to be for next week.
It won't be the story won't be as good when Colorado loses by 4 touchdowns next week. So
yeah,
that's really why.
So. But Colorado State, I mean, 23, they're beating Colorado State by 23. They're charged up, they're juiced up. They're ready to rock and roll. I don't know if they can handle Oregon. They probably can't, but Colorado State pales in comparison to even Nebraska and old Jeff Sims.
Yeah, they have. Colorado. I took the Colorado under 3.5 win total for this year. I thought it would take them a while to turn around. I only played it for 1 unit, so it's not really a big deal. But they've turned it around fast. But to their credit, I think looking ahead to the schedule, everyone expected TCU to be much better. TCU lost like 50 players off the championship game team last year. So Colorado, they haven't really been tested yet, right? Like Nebraska played with them for the first half, but Nebraska did everything they could, self-inflicted, to lose that game, right? Like they just shot themselves in the foot. Jeff Sims just turned the ball over unforced, multiple times. The guy's got like 8 turnovers.
Shocker. He's the NCAA leading all-time, or is it current active leading turnover? Yeah. I mean, he's a turnover machine, absolute machine.
So, I'm not really surprised that, I had Colorado last week, so I was happy they won. They pretty much rolled Nebraska in the second half, and Colorado State, they might struggle against, at the beginning because it's tough to get up for a lesser division game, and they'll probably be looking ahead to Oregon. So before the year started, I would have said, Colorado State could possibly could upset Colorado, but at this point, I don't really think so. But I think Colorado is looking ahead to next week to Oregon. And this game is just a pass for me because I really have no interest. I think ESPN going there for game day is, if there was a week to do it, it was this week, because the games this week's schedule is pretty down. Next week,
next week you got a lot of options for game days. I mean, Ohio State, Notre Dame. We'll get to next week. One more game on the college slate. Penn State, number 7, minus 14.5 versus Illinois. Total set at 48.5. Penn State, their offense is rolling this year, but it always rolls in the first 6 weeks of the season, it seems. Illinois, they've got Ole Miss transfer Luke Altmaier as their quarterback. He's leading them pretty well, but they're not going to be able to hold a candle to Penn State. This team is significantly more talented, significantly larger, better. I don't know if they get that 14.5, just because I kind of expect this to be a little bit low scoring, just by the way Illinois plays. And Penn State as well. They run the ball a ton. But I think it could be a pretty low-scoring game. Penn State's definitely going to win it, though.
Yeah, I like Penn State to cover on this one. Penn State's looked great to start the season. Illinois, I had Kansas last week, -3 against Illinois, and they just steamrolled Illinois. And the game was a lot closer than it looked on the scoreboard. The game looked a lot closer than it actually was. Kansas pretty much blew them out the entire second half. I'm not a big fan of Brett Bielema. I think he's a very mediocre coach at best. He's just a retread that got fired, multiple stops before he made his way to Illinois. So Penn State, I think this is the best Penn State team we've seen in a while. And I like James Franklin, how James Franklin is like they're on the 5-yard line with a minute left, and he's trying to score a touchdown, even though they're up by 20 points. I like that mentality.
Hit the total, baby. Give me the over.
I liked his quote where he said, if you don't like it, like, stop us. I got my number 2s in there. They never play. They're trying to score. So I like that mentality. I got to say, James Franklin, I mean, he's come a long way from when he first started at Penn State. I didn't give the guy, much of a shot, but he's come a long way. So
you didn't give him much of a shot after coming to Vanderbilt and being good?
So, I mean, his first few years at Penn State were pretty down. His record against ranked teams was atrocious. So I think he's finally got Penn State rolling, and I think this is if there's ever been a year for Penn State to make the playoff, I think this is probably their best shot. And Illinois, I think Penn State will probably steamroll them. So if it gets to 14, I'll be glad to take Penn State minus 14.
That does it for the NCAA this week, man. I mean, there's like we talked about earlier, it's kind of lackluster, really huge matchups. I mean, Tennessee, Florida, Kansas State, Missouri, maybe LSU, Mississippi State. I mean, other than that, though, not really that much going on. A lot of, kind of cupcake games for our bigger teams. Let's move on over to the NFL, man. We had a super, interesting week 1 of the NFL.
Yeah,
some tragedy, man. The Aaron Rodgers deal. There's so much hype behind that all off season. Everybody was excited. I mean, and then for 4 plays, whatever it was. I mean, what a letdown.
My wife is a Jets fan, so she's from Long Island. So she literally, the game was starting, and she's like, "Oh, I forgot to put my shirt on." She got a new Aaron Rodgers shirt, Jets. She puts it on. 4 plays later, he's injured. He's done for the season. So I don't know if they'll take that back for a refund, but it was a pretty wild week 1. We saw a lot of mediocre performances from quarterbacks, especially. I mean, Joe Burrow looked like he just took the bag and then robbed the bank.
Really, he looked horrible.
But Jesse, we had the Browns. The Browns have the Bengals numbers. So who would have thought that the Bengals, Chiefs, and Bills would have all lost in week 1, right? So
that'd have been a hell of a parlay.
I thought the games last week were pretty mediocre. Outside of the Dolphins Chargers.
That's what I was about to say. That game was far from mediocre. That game was awesome.
I thought that was probably the game of the week. Tua looked great, so I'm pumped for the Dolphins season this year. But yeah, outside of those games, it was a pretty mediocre week 1 schedule. So looking forward to week 2.
Curious to see how the Buccaneers wind up. How Baker winds up doing the rest of the season down there. He's doing his usual antics, getting everybody fired up and lower the shoulder a little bit, getting, letting everybody know he's there.
Yeah.
But man, they beat the Vikings. I don't know how much of that was, Kirk Cousins just, what was it, 4 turnovers or something like that? 3.
Yeah. The game really wasn't Kirk Cousins' fault. I mean, Kirk Cousins threw a dime, and he threw a dime for a touchdown in the end zone, and the receiver just had the DB take it out, literally just ripped it out of his hands.
Unbelievable.
Cost
me $380.
Kirk Cousins had a pretty good game, I thought. So that game was kind of flukish, Tampa Bay just kind of played like game manager style with Baker, although he did throw a nice touchdown pass to Mike Evans and
Mike. You think Mike's going to be a pretty big trade ammo for the Bucs this year?
No, because he's a free agent after this year. So
okay.
So we'll see what happens, but and he's getting older. I mean, as good as these guys are, they're getting older and older. I mean, Mike Evans is just like his 10th year in the league almost.
Yeah.
So these guys are
pretty good stats every year.
Exactly, but they're getting older and older, and it's tough to really drop the bag for a guy would be in his 11th year, right? So we'll see what happens.
Well, let's jump into this week's games. We've got the Bengals versus Ravens. Bengals -3.5. Total set at 46.5. Ravens looked a little shaky to start this year. They were, I think, like -500 favorites this week. Absolutely bona fide. And, very shaky start. Lamar, I mean, what did you think about the Ravens?
I had the Ravens -9.5 for a 2-unit play. So I was obviously, when the game started, I was a little like, what's going on here? But Lamar hadn't really played live game action in a year, right? So it's been a while since Lamar played. I thought they did get rolling a little bit, and a lot of their turnovers and stuff were unforced errors, stuff like that, stuff that they clean up right throughout the year. So I'm not really worried
I hated to
about.
see J.K. Dobbins go down again.
Yeah, it's
So
tough.
every year it sucks for him, man. It really sucks for him. And
It's a
fantasy
tough,
owners, which I am not this year.
yeah, tough injury definitely for J.K. and same injury as Aaron Rodgers. So it's definitely a tough one. But I think week one NFL, the most important thing to do in week one in the NFL is just to not overreact, right? Like people will
The
overreact and
Cowboys are
say,
winning the Super Bowl, baby.
yeah, Joe Burrow sucked, like, right? Like, well, Joe Burrow, he's not going to suck for the entire year, right? Like a lot of these quarterbacks, I mean, every quarterback every year pretty much has like a big clunker, right? So I think a lot of guys like, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, they got it out of the way in week one, right? So it'll be
I hope
interesting to
Josh Allen
see.
did. Good Lord.
It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. So, not really concerned with anything I saw week one, but guys who did play well, it just gives me affirmation that they're going to have a good year. Like Tua looked great.
He looked
The,
dialed, man.
the Cowboys defense looked great too. I
It
mean,
did.
the Giants. If I was a Giants fan though, I'd kind of be a little worried. I mean, I read that the Giants had a field goal blocked for a touchdown. They had a pick six. They had three other things, right? That no other team, like only like one other team had all five of those things happen in an entire season. They had in
All in
NFL
one
history,
game.
they had it happen in one game, right? So I thought that was
It was
pretty
the worst
crazy
possible
stat.
game, like luck-wise for them, I'd say.
It was, but I think Daniel Jones.
Hey,
Last year had a lucky.
40,
I think
40 million a year.
Yeah, 4 years, 160 million. I think Daniel Jones had like a luck box year last year. The Giants won like so many games by just one score, right? They didn't. I don't think they scored over 30 points more than once, right? So sooner or later, their luck was going to run out. Their coin flipping wins were going to run out, and I think the Giants might be in trouble this year because they might be the fourth best team in that division. So
I mean, judging from that first game, they're definitely in trouble. Moving on, Chiefs -3 versus the Jaguars. Total set at 51. Jaguars look pretty good week one, man. I mean, they're playing the Colts, but that offense is rolling. Calvin Ridley, oh yeah, baby, he's back. He looked like he never left. I mean, he looked better than before he left. I mean, he looks awesome. That Jaguars offense is going to roll.
He must have bet on himself, So
yeah,
yeah.
Check his account history.
But he the Jaguars did look good. I mean, they let the Colts stay in the game a lot longer than they should have.
Yes.
I think this is a game where if the Chiefs had won week one, I'd be like, watch out, they can slip up against the Jags. But since they lost week one, I think that they're going to be, really on edge, wanting to play well, right? I think they'll be really focused and stuff. I don't know if we've heard about like is Travis Kelce playing or not. Obviously,
he said in an interview today that he was feeling a lot better this week than he was last week, but that it didn't really sound that that great.
Yeah.
He said he felt like an asshole for missing the game, but his health's got to be up there above that.
So if he doesn't play, I mean, I'm not. It's hard to bet the Chiefs without Kelce because we saw that first game how important Kelce was, right? You can't.
And Chris Jones too, but they got him back now.
Yeah, you can't really replace Kelce. The Chiefs defense looked pretty good in that first game though, but their offense just, they just couldn't really score. They couldn't finish drives and stuff. And that's Kelce, you look how many touchdowns he scores every year and stuff. And that, that's all on him. So if Kelce plays, I'd probably lean towards the Chiefs, but if not, I'll probably just pass, right? Because, who knows, but I think it all comes down to Kelce and we'll just wait to see like what his health status is because obviously losing him is a huge blow. For the Chiefs. So.
I mean, he's such an integral part of their offense. I mean, every play he's involved in some way. So yeah, we'll see how they wind up doing if Kelce plays or not. Moving on, Dolphins -2.5 versus the Patriots. Total set at 46.5. Patriots, they didn't look that great. I mean, they held with the Eagles. I think it was 16-0 in like the first quarter, and then it was just snooze fest for the next 45 minutes of game time. But I mean, the Dolphins looked primed, charged, on point. Every adjective that's positive that you could use to describe the Dolphins on Sunday. I mean, they looked great. They played game of the week, like you said. Granted, the defense gave up a ton, but that offense is awesome.
Yeah, the Dolphins kind of play like a bend but don't break defense, and when they needed a stop at the end, I mean, they sacked they sacked Justin Herbert twice in the final drive. So when they need a stop, they can. They have some lockdown DBs. They made some stupid penalties, but I think Mike McDaniel. I think he's one of the best coaches in the NFL.
I agree.
He's always a couple steps ahead of the other team. His play calling is just phenomenal. And now they go up to New England, playing a New England team that was getting destroyed early, like you said, by the Eagles. But I think the Eagles kind of took their foot off the brake. I wasn't really impressed with the Eagles last week, and they nearly let New England come back and beat them at the end. It's hard for me to watch Mac Jones play and want to really bet the Patriots, right? This is a game where I might look at the total because I think both teams will score.
46. I mean, that's pretty low.
And just looking at the two offenses, the Dolphins are much more talented on offense. Pretty much at every position. So I would definitely lean towards the over in this game. And if I had to pick a side, I'd pick Dolphins. But historically, the Dolphins always struggle in New England. Yep. Obviously, that's when they had Tom Brady and stuff. But
probably 10 years of those stats. Yeah.
Yeah, gun to my head.
Anybody struggles up there then, I guess.
Pretty much. I definitely roll with the Dolphins, but the better bet I do like in this game would be the over.
Yeah, 46.5. I mean, that is so low. Moving on, Jets plus 9.5 versus the Cowboys. Total set at 39, probably lowest total of the week. I don't think the Jets are going to cover that at all. I mean, unless they, sign Matt Fitzpatrick or whatever, Fitzpatrick, get him up there. I don't know. I don't know what their plan is.
Yeah.
They've said in all the interviews that it's Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, he's ready for this. He's ready for this. Well, he wasn't last offseason. How is he now? He wasn't when he got Rodgers. How is he now? I don't get it.
I think Zach Wilson learned a lot in this offseason from learning from Aaron Rodgers, right? That's probably the best possible thing he could have had in his career, is just learning from Aaron Rodgers the entire offseason. So definitely it's a shock. It's a shock that he's playing, obviously. And the Jets, they had a very emotionally charged victory overtime with a punt return, walk-off touchdown against the Bills. And, their highs, it's almost like when they won that game, it feels like they won the Super Bowl, right? Like everyone came on that field to celebrate and stuff. So, they might be coming down from a high heading to Dallas this week. And while the Cowboys won 40-0, we didn't really get to see, much of the Cowboys offensively. They didn't really have to do anything, right? They got short field all night, turnovers, and they dominated the entire game. So, if I had to pick a side, though, I mean, it's very tough to bet, Zach Wilson on the road at Dallas when this Dallas defense looked like an all-pro defense last week. So
they did.
If I had to pick a side right here, I'd pick. I don't like laying 9.5 with the Cowboys because the Cowboys, they're known for playing up in big games and down against crappy teams. So I really wouldn't be surprised, in years past if they lost this game. But I'm trying to think, this is a new Cowboys team, right? And is this the year the Cowboys get it going, right? So it's just hard for me to lay 9.5 a spread. But if I had to bet one side, if the Jets got to 10, I might take a look at it. At 9.5, I probably would take a look at the Cowboys, but I probably would stay away from this game and just bet props for the Cowboys if I had to.
I mean, the props for the Cowboys, even in a 40-0 victory last week, every one of them would have lost. I mean, there was no offense.
Yeah.
And I had the over in that game, and I went, turned the game off. It's 40-0 with 12 minutes to go. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna win this bet, and of course that didn't happen. What an unbelievable letdown! But this total's 39, and I don't necessarily know if it's going to get there. I mean, the only reason they got to 40 in the last game was 3 interceptions, all kinds of crazy stuff. Like you said, that happened to the Giants. Yeah. So,
and the Jets play calling against the Bills when Wilson came into the game was very much of a game manager. They weren't really letting him throw it down the field, right? You got to figure Aaron Rodgers probably changes 80% of the play calls at the line of scrimmage, right? And he can do that, because he can do whatever he wants, right? Because he's Aaron Rodgers. But Zach Wilson, he doesn't have that power, right? So Zach Wilson doesn't have that knowledge that Aaron Rodgers has to change 80% of the plays, right? So I think the Jets will probably go much more conservative. Their running game did look great.
It did. And their defense looked great. They got championship
Yeah.
caliber defense, I feel.
Their defense did look great. So I mean, like in this game, I could see the Jets having like a pick six on Dak, since Dak, he led the NFL last year in interceptions, and he only played 12 games. So I could see them intercepting Dak, right? So good bet. This game might be like both quarterbacks to throw an interception, right? Something like that. But as of right now, I probably will lay off this game, and unless the Jets get to like 10, like I said, because if you give the Jets 10 points, they're going to play, smash mouth football maybe, and maybe they get a pick on Dak, a couple turnovers, because their defense played great against Josh Allen. So I would lean towards the Jets if they got to 10, but right now 9.5, I probably would pass.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be right there with you. I mean, the total at 39, I just can't get really behind that. I have no idea what the Cowboys offense is really gonna do. I mean, they showed me nothing in the last game. I'm with you, man. I think it's almost a pass for me. Other than that, any other NFL games you wanna run through? That's all I got on the run sheet for today.
And we got two Monday Night Football games this week. I mean, these first 2 weeks of NFL have been like lackluster matchups, in my opinion. Just really,
the two Monday night games: Saints, Panthers, Browns, Steelers. I like the Browns. I mean, the Browns look great against Cincinnati. The Steelers, I mean, they made the 49ers look like the best team in football.
Yeah, the 49ers looked great. Purdy looked great back there at quarterback. So I think the Niners are primed for a Super Bowl run this year. I mean, I think the NFC Championship will be the Niners versus either the Eagles or the Cowboys. So, it's right there for those teams. I think the NFC is very top heavy. You basically just have like those three teams right there. I think the AFC is very loaded, right? So it's gonna be tough to come out of the AFC. But yeah, this week it's just another week of I guess the Ravens Bengals game will be pretty fun to watch. We'll see which Joe Burrow shows up, right? Like it was raining last week and stuff like that, but Joe Burrow just played very poorly, right? They just got nothing going. They got dominated the entire time.
T. Higgins, dude. T. Higgins, what was he? 0 for 6, 6 targets, no catches. I mean, their whole team just wasn't clicking.
And I could see T. Higgins like having a down year this year because I don't think they extended him before the season started. He was looking for a big contract extension, and they did not give him one. They said they were going to pass on that. So I think that, for him, he's probably thinking that the franchise doesn't have much faith in him.
Right.
So I could see T. Higgins definitely
hard to get motivated.
I could see T. Higgins having a letdown season. So, but that's about it.
That's about it, fellas. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you here. We're going to have another reaction show to this weekend's football games, probably on Sunday or Monday, and then we'll get into the flow every week. So appreciate you tuning in, Rob. Appreciate you. See y'all next time.
See you later.